Welcome to another episode of Inside Access Control, sponsored by SIA. Today, a very special conversation that is traditionally we've talked a little bit about before, but never really in depth at this point. But I'm very excited today to have Jeff Snyder from Jeff Snyder Coaching join me. So Jeff, thank you very much for taking the time.
Well, thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. So you and I were talking a little bit before we jumped on here to do this, and it's sort of let's call it a top of mind on my end of when I look at the industry and through some of the work that I've done on my personal self, if you would. Our industry is very technical, and it likes to be focused on the technical side of how things work. And I believe a lot of it comes down to the emotional intelligence, self-awareness side of things, of really the people side gets in the way. And knowing, at least from your background and what you discussed, I think it's interesting because you have an aspect of understanding the security marketplace like some others don't from outside the industry. So I really would like to dig into a little bit about that. But before we do you mind just give us a little bit about your background and who you are and what you've done and what you currently do now?
Sure. I'll make it real quick. In 1990, I stumbled into recruiting. Ironically, I couldn't find a job after I got out of college with a marketing degree, and I ended up responding to an ad in an executive search firm. Struggled for the first year and a half. It's a really, really complex business, and all of a sudden it kicked in and everything took off for me. So I stayed in that firm for 4.5 years. 4.5 years later, I left. I started my own company. I sat out a non-compete, tried some different things for a year within recruiting that didn't violate my non-compete. And I went back to what I had been doing. The difference was I didn't want to do it any longer working for someone else. I wanted to do it on my own. And as we go through this conversation, you'll understand why. So 1997, I stumbled into what is now cybersecurity. 1999, I created securityrecruiter.com, and that's all I've done since is security, risk, compliance, privacy, things that live in and around both corporate and physical and cybersecurity. They're all three of those. I've recruited all over the world. It's been an exciting ride. But a few years ago, I decided that I want to spend the rest of my life coaching, and I've been coaching for about 8 years. A client came to me one day. This is one of my HR clients, the corporate client, and he said, "Jeff, why don't you offer coaching services?" And my answer was, well, what's that? I lived so much in a bubble of recruiting. You know, we all tend to get in a bubble of whatever our expertise is. And it turns out I'd been coaching for 20 years. I just didn't know it. So I turned this into a formal business. I've been deeply trained in Clifton Strengths coaching. And in December of 2013, I went through some very deep training around emotional intelligence coaching and have been doing those two things ever since.
Perfect. And that's why I was excited to talk to you about this, because you spent some time dealing with people in the space and then your deep training into the emotional intelligence side. So at the beginning, when I talked about the emotional intelligence and the belief that a lot of sort of the success and failure of people in the industry, if you would, happens to come down to that, not a technical reason. What are your thoughts around that? I mean, how are you seeing it, especially as times like right now, which are great uncertainties and people are in their house and, there's a lot of discomfort, if you would, for a lot of reasons. What are your thoughts around how emotional intelligence plays into the day-to-day and the success and failure?
Well, first, if you don't mind, let's not call it emotional intelligence.
Sure.
Let's call it how we perceive ourselves and how we're perceived by and get along with other people. So now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it a whole lot more human than a big fancy psychological term. Emotional intelligence actually came to be in the mid-90s. It's not that old. The behavior that goes with it is as old as humanity. But the term and the topic weren't pulled together by PhD psychologists until the mid-90s. So what I find now is that most people, and it has nothing to do with security, most people, most human beings right now are functioning predominantly from fear. Fear of getting something, fear of losing something. Fear is everywhere. And most people don't have a healthy mechanism for addressing and dealing with that. So fear is a big issue. Emotional intelligence in the space that you and I are working in, and in security, it's all about self-awareness, understanding who we are and exactly who we're not. There are way too many people on this planet right now who are trying to be someone that they're not. You can see them everywhere. They're all around us. And there are people who are living life according to who they actually are, the way they've been created. Those people are the people that are delivering authentic delivery. They're people you likely trust and admire. So being able to live and operate authentically is in short supply at the moment. It doesn't have to be. It can be coached, it can be trained, it can be learned by anybody.
Okay, let me ask you on that. So why do you believe that maybe it's not this, so but I'll say the statement and you let me know. Why do you believe the default is to try to be who you're not versus trying to be who you are? See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'll just give you something that anybody could go look up. Around March or so of 2018, there's an article in the Harvard Business Review. It's called How to Work for a Boss Who Lacks Self-Awareness. It's a good read for anybody, especially if you are in charge of other people. The article, and I'm only going to talk about the first paragraph so I don't blow it. If you want to go read the rest of it, and you should. And I have no skin in the game. I didn't write the article. The article suggests that less than 10% of people are walking around with accurate self-awareness. Now, I've been doing this kind of self-awareness coaching work for almost a decade now, but I'd never seen it put in that sort of a frame. So when I read that, I kept reading. That article grabbed my attention, and then I went out looking for other similar writings around self-awareness. And at first I thought, no, it can't be that bad. Because what that article was saying is more than 90% of people are living life trying to be someone that they're actually not. Well, not too long after that, I worked with a coaching client, and I'm not here to sell a particular service or product, but I'll give this example. In the realm of Clifton strengths, there are 34 traits. We all have all 34 of them. The power of the tool is we all have them in a different order. And if you happen to work with somebody who understands more than you understand, you can very quickly start to understand what your natural giftedness is. You can also quickly see what you're just not very good at. Well, this particular client, he was in his mid-40s. He spent, well, up to 45 years old trying to live out of 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. He completely blew off 1 through 10. 1 through 10 is where his giftedness is. It's where the authentic version of him sits. And quite frankly, once those traits turn into full-blown strengths and they're polished, that's where his personal power is sitting. It took us 6 months Took us 6 months to get past who he was trying to be. He had to come to grips with that. And he finally said, "You mean my life would be different if I trust you and we work out of this 1 through 10 uh, list of traits?" And I said, "Absolutely, 100%. Well, fast forward, he has since suggested that I've saved his life, I've saved his marriage, and I've helped him to completely recalibrate his career. Because in all three of those areas, and he has an alcohol challenge, that was the Save the Life reference. I didn't know I was helping him with that kind of a challenge. Wow. Um, in all three of those areas, he needed to recalibrate. He didn't become so much a different person, he became the person he should have been all along. It's just been suppressed.
So that would make me think though that if I was to look at, and maybe this is my how my brain works, but so the steps that need to be taken were there was obviously something that triggered him to know that he needed to talk to you, and then
Yeah,
the second one was quantifying what those were, because if he's working in the 34, so I guess that's where the Clifton strengths, not to be a commercial for them, but
no,
that's sort of what it does, is it quantifies so you know where to focus or not. Otherwise, from what I hear you saying, is we go off of more of what we feel, and if we go off of what we feel, we try most people will try to emulate who they aren't, not who they necessarily are. Is that
we go off of what we think other people want us to be. So if you're working for a boss and that boss wants you to be, um, I don't know, quickly decisive, and you're just not quickly decisive, you're deeply analytical, it's not an IQ issue, it's the fact that you process slowly. My wife is extremely smart, deeply analytical, and she processes very slowly. She needs time to make decisions. You could snap your fingers and I'll make a decision. So that's the self-awareness component. It's understanding, oh, I operate at the speed of light. My wife operates much slower. Many times she'll come up with exactly the perfect answer. And because I move so quickly, sometimes I'll come up with an answer too fast and it could have been better. But that's how we're uniquely wired. And for 15 years, we didn't clearly know that. Well, now we know. Now I can make adjustments to slow down. She can't speed up, but I can slow down. So usually in a relationship between two people, one person's going to probably have a little more responsibility to take action and do something, because the fast person can slow down. I work with a lot of strategically gifted people who move very, very quickly mentally. And then when they open their mouths, what comes out of their mouth? It's big, it's fast, it's furious. They don't even know that, but they can learn to slow down and simplify.
Yeah, no, you and I talked before. It's been one of my things that early in my career I was told I was ready, shoot, aim was the nickname that my first boss gave me, and
Okay, yeah,
it's an ongoing battle, I would say, that I have with myself, because I feel like sometimes though the worst thing that could happen to somebody that's that way, myself, the worst thing that happened to me for that is if I see success out of doing that, it sort of just strengthens the fact that I should be doing that.
yeah,
Um,
because you become the equivalent of Pavlov's dog.
yeah,
You got a
no,
biscuit, you'll do the same thing. You got another biscuit, you'll do the same thing.
yeah, especially if you're high on, I guess, achiever or the rest of them too, where or what I don't, whichever one's the one where you sort of need the constant reassurance. So let me ask you a question on we span listeners on this side from uh late in the career to early in the career, so I'll
Mhm.
ask this, if you don't mind, if you could speak to both of them.
Yeah,
um
I can talk to
so
anybody.
Though, thank you. I noticed that, which I appreciate about you.
Okay.
Um, the if I'm late in my career, and I might be hardened in certain ways, what's the one piece of advice you can give them that they should do? And then I would ask the same thing if I'm early in my career, and I'm sort of green and ready to go. What do you suggest?
It is never too late to gain accurate, straightforward, clean, clear self-awareness. I have a client right now who is 61. Is that late enough for you? 61 years old. And he came to me and he said, my wife and I are starting a business. And we've tried things like this in the past. And well, one thing after another, I get in the way and I tend to move in directions that she doesn't understand. Can you help us to kind of get centered? I said, sure, have her take the assessment too. So I got on a video call with both of them. And in this example, I'll just tell you that he is not strategic. Out of 34 traits, that's his number 34. What that means is he does not see how to get from A to Z. He moves tactically slow. He's not a good planner, but he is, it's called futuristic. He's visionary. Visionary starts where strategic stops. His wife is strategic, but she's not visionary. So I help them to figure out who plays first, who plays second, who pitches, who catches, and so on. And they have a couple people on their team. So we did this with the entire team, and it's essentially like building a human jigsaw puzzle. So whether someone is 61 or 27, random number, the 27-year-old has an advantage over the 61-year-old. And the advantage is the earlier in life that a person can figure out exactly who they are and exactly who they're not, they can now start aiming their decisions more properly to say yes to the right things and no to the wrong things, and maybe not have to make some of the mistakes and have some of the hiccups that the 61-year-old lived through.
Totally fair, and I appreciate that. That is, I look back sometimes and wish that I did spend the time instead of fighting it earlier in my career, and being more open to currently where I'm at now, because it does, I believe, and there's still a ton of work that needs to be done and it will never stop. So, Jeff, if people want to find out more information about you and your services and what you do, where's the best place to do that?
They can visit Jeff Snyder, Snyder coaching, Snyder like the pretzels, jeffsnydercoaching.com. There's an inquiry form on just about every page. Just send one. I'll get back to you.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's quick, but with a subject that you could talk forever on, and I too, and it's one of those things that you can't stop doing. So, thank you for doing it. It's very important, especially nowadays. I think for people to really take a step back and think about uh, the self side of what's going on, and be okay with being okay. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.